Okay, it's time to put this shit to bed. You know, that calorie is a calorie nonsense that's been peddled by the food industry and their scientific pawns for so long, we actually started believing it. Because what I'm about to show you from this new groundbreaking study is going to shatter that perception forever. Here, researchers prove that when men eat an ultra-processed diet, normalizing total calories, protein, carbs, and fat, they gain more fat, crash their testosterone, destroyed sperm quality, and to top it all off, their bodies got flooded with hormone-disrupting chemicals. Yeah, this isn't about willpower. And it's not about portion control. This is about the fact that your body treats these foods completely differently, even when they have identical macronutrient profiles. It's time to know the truth and time to take back your health. Let's go. Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic way. Now, when I say calorie, I am not talking about the exact scientific definition of the energy required to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. I'm talking about the dogma that all foods' cellular and metabolic impact, and thus their health impact, can be simplified into units of energy. And that all said units of energy act the same inside the body despite their origin. In other words, that calories in and calories out are the reason for your stellar health, or more realistically, your struggling health. And listen, I don't want you to just trust me on this, because that's what we've been doing for all those calorie in, calorie out peddlers for decades. Instead, I just want you to listen and absorb this new study out of the University of Copenhagen, which I think will do all the talking for me, mainly due to its absolutely rigorous design and methodology. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Here, researchers recruited 43 healthy, non-obese men aged 20 to 35 and placed them through a randomized control crossover protocol using a 2x2 design, meaning every participant participated in each arm of the study. And here's how it went down. For the duration of 3 weeks, a random half of the participants ate a 80% plus ultra-processed diet, while the other half ate a diet which had a measly 1% ultra-processed foods, meaning 99% unprocessed. And following the intervention, both groups participated in a 3-month washout or break where they lived their normal life eating whatever they wanted before switching over to the other diet that they did not do in the first stage of the study for an additional 3 weeks. The beauty here was that everyone had to go through both diets, which eliminated genetic differences, lifestyle factors, and other individual variables. The researchers were literally comparing the same person to themselves across 43 people. But wait, it gets even better. While doing this, the researchers controlled everything when it came to the eating. Same total calories, protein, carbohydrates, fat, and they even accounted for calorie excess. Because in both the intervention groups, half the participants got a normal amount of calories for their size and activity level, while the other half got an extra 500 calories per day. Yeah, this research team certainly covered a lot of ground, making it pretty damn close to as perfect as a nutritional study can get. And while all this was underway, they had participants show up to a clinic several times throughout for a physical, vital measurements, DEXA scan, which surveys fat and lean body mass, blood analysis, and semen collection. Yeah, they tested the crown jewels all right. And what they found will likely have you running away from those ultra-processed filled middle aisles of the grocery store. Here is where the calorie in, calorie out narrative begins to crack. Because despite eating the exact same amount of calories, protein, carbs, and fats, these young healthy men gained approximately 1 kilogram or 2.5 pounds of additional fat mass on the ultra-processed way of eating. And to be clear, we're not talking just weight, we are talking solely fat. Yeah. And this happened regardless whether they were eating normal calories or excess. Oh, and by the way, in just 3 weeks. Imagine what 3 decades would do. But unfortunately, this was just the beginning of the findings. They also observed that the ultra-processed diet sank the men's testosterone levels, decreased their follicle-stimulating hormone, which is the hormone responsible for stimulating the production of sperm in the testes, and as a result, dramatically reduced the participants' overall fertility. Yikes is right. But again, it gets worse, because next they assessed the participants' blood for metabolic abnormalities, observing that ultra-processed eating was associated with a significant increase in phthalates, which are known endocrine-disrupting chemicals to the human body. Not cool. I know. Making all of this not just about weight gain, but about your body being poisoned at the cellular level, your endocrine system being hijacked, and your reproductive capacity being compromised, regardless of calorie and macronutrient content, but instead the food itself. Sorry, I should have went food itself. Pretty eye-opening. But how? I mean, what exactly is going on in there that causes such a significant difference in just 3 weeks? Well, let's go through some potential culprits. First, there's the chemical factor, because due to their inherent nature, ultra-processed foods are often loaded with industrial chemicals, like the above-mentioned phthalates from plastic packaging and processing equipment. And these chemicals often act as endocrine disruptors, or compounds that disrupt your hormone system, aka one of the body's main communication networks. But not only that, these compounds also interact with your gut microbes and produce toxic metabolites, which in turn elevate inflammation and cellular dysfunction all throughout the body. In fact, we covered this very reality in this breakdown here, reiterating again that your body does not just process calories. It processes everything else that comes with those calories as well. And that's something we all need to be mindful of if we want to operate at our true potential. Next, the ultra-processed diet often comes with elevated saturated fat, cholesterol, refined grains, added sugars, and low amounts of fiber, which alters the metabolic response compared to real whole foods, ultimately changing how your body absorbs and utilizes nutrients. For example, instead of a slow, steady release, you get rapid spikes and crashes. And this can overburden systems, promoting situations like fat storage and metabolic dysfunction, even as we saw today with identical macronutrient profiles. Along with that, it's also important to note that all of the protective micronutrients such as vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals are often stripped from these foods during processing. So it's really the worst of all worlds when it comes to overall nutrition. Lastly, we must call out the biggest culprit when it comes to basically all biological problems: inflammation, which, as I mentioned just a moment before, the ultra-processed diet can do a hell of a job upregulating. One of the main ways being all of the additives, preservatives, and processing byproducts you ingest when you eat them, which often activate the immune responses in your gut and liver, impair mitochondria function leading to oxidative stress, and inevitably have a full body downstream or upstream effect. Moral of the story being, although this ultra-processed food provides the basic nutrients to survive, it does nothing but inhibit your ability to thrive. Now, I do also want to point out something interesting that the researchers observed, specifically around inflammation, and that was the fact that inflammatory markers such as C-reactive protein increased in both intervention groups. Yeah, weird. But here's why that doesn't invalidate these findings. And it's simply because when you dramatically shift diets, the body needs some time to settle in. And even though the participants were healthy at baseline, their diets were comprised of about 50% ultra-processed foods coming in. So taking that all the way down to 1% and causing the body to adapt overnight can stimulate an inflammatory adjustment period, a time where your gut microbiome shifts, your immune system recalibrates, and your body settles into its new, hopeful norm, which ultimately is part of the body's natural adaptation process. Anyway, I thought that was an important finding to call out and explain. With that, let's talk strategy. Because now that I've successfully scared the crap out of you, I might as well leave you with some tips you can deploy to minimize the ultra-processed foods in your life. So, Let's cover a few. First, become an ultra-processed food detective by knowing the following. If it's in a box with a nutrition label, by definition, it's processed. That's right. Real foods, by law, don't require a nutrition label. A lot of people don't know that. These foods are also mostly found in the middle aisles of the grocery store, where there's no refrigeration needed. And when you are choosing some strategic processed foods, because they're not all bad, aim for 5 ingredients or less, with ingredients that you recognize and can pronounce. So if you want, do a little practice at home and survey what you currently have in your pantry. And after you've identified those ultra-processed foods in your life, map out a sustainable plan to replace them. Sustainable meaning not trying to change everything overnight. Instead, adopting something like the 80-20 strategy, which entails replacing about 80% of your processed foods with real whole food alternatives, starting with the most shady and questionable ones. And a good way to start doing this is by focusing on one category per week. For example, breakfast, lunch, snacks, dinner, and then slowly adjusting over the course of months. When I started doing this for myself years ago, I identified those worst offenders and looked up healthy, somewhat similar alternatives online, curbing things like my grab a Butterfinger on the walk home from work habit with a homemade chocolatey organic smoothie bowl that was 10 times better. Some common healthy swaps could look like Greek yogurt with nuts and berries instead of protein bars, eggs and or steel-cut oats with fruit instead of breakfast cereal, raw nuts, fresh fruit, or a hard-boiled egg instead of packaged snacks, or, like I just mentioned, a real food smoothie instead of a meal replacement shake. So take a moment, think about your Butterfinger equivalents, and start mapping out some healthy swaps. And one of the absolute best ways to get out of the ultra-processed world is by learning to cook or using your cooking skills more efficiently. And it's not that hard. A few YouTubes or some AI tools can teach you all the basics pretty quickly and also give you some great recipes and meal prep ideas. Because batch cooking some healthy meals for the week is a great way to put yourself in a position to be successful when the motivation is low. And speaking of putting yourself in a position to succeed, making your kitchen and pantry a home of health rather than ultra-processed indulgences is a great hack as well. Because come on, truth be told, we typically eat what's laying around. So make that laying around stuff truly nourishing. And yes, this will kind of suck in the beginning. More if you've been on that ultra-processed bandwagon for years. It takes time to adjust, both from a palate perspective, but also a microbiome and metabolic perspective as well. But know this. Efficient cellular and metabolic operations is self-reinforcing. Once you begin to re-experience what it feels like to be functioning optimally and efficiently at that level, you're never gonna want to go back. But the sad truth is, most people will never feel how they're capable of feeling. Large part due to the stronghold these ultra-processed toxic foods have on them. So I urge you, use your beautiful gift of free will and start owning your health already. Because when you do, you own your outcome. With that, I'd love to hear from you, so please drop your top hack or story of how you escaped the ultra-processed stronghold in the comments below. And let's get better together. And hopefully now, there's no more confusion about those silly calories, so we can all focus on what truly matters. Looking cool naked. I mean, feeling how you're capable of feeling each day. I don't know where that came from. But the two actually go hand in hand most of the time. So, yeah.